So this is a story about two crocodiles. Now the old crocodile was floating at the river's edge when a younger crocodile swam up next to him. And he said, I've heard from many that you're the fiercest hunter in all of the river bottoms. Please teach me your ways. Awoken from a nice long afternoon nap, the old crocodile glanced at the young crocodile with one of his reptilian eyes, said nothing, and then fell back asleep atop the water. Feeling frustrated and disrespected, the young crocodile swam off upriver to chase after some catfish, leaving behind a flurry of bubbles. I'll show him, he thought to himself. Later that day, the young crocodile returned to the old crocodile, who was still napping, and began to brag to him about his successful hunt. I caught two meaty catfish today. What have you caught? Nothing. Perhaps you're not so fierce at all. Unfazed, the old crocodile again looked at the young crocodile, said nothing, closed his eyes, and continued to float atop the water as tiny minnows munched away lightly at the algae on his underbelly. Again, the young crocodile was angry he couldn't get a response from the elder, and he swam off a second time upstream to see what he could hunt. After a few hours of thrashing about, he was able to hunt down a small crane. Smiling, he kept the bird in his jaws and swam back to the old crocodile, adamant about showing him who the true hunter was. As the young crocodile rounded the bend, he saw the elder crocodile still floating in the same spot near the river's edge. However, something had changed. A large wildebeest was enjoying an afternoon drink just inches near the old crocodile's head. In one lightning fast movement, the old crocodile bolted out of the water, wrapped his jaws around the great wildebeest, and pulled him under the water. Awestruck, the young crocodile swam up with tiny bird hanging from his mouth and watched as the old crocodile enjoyed his 500-pound meal. The young crocodile asked him, please tell me, how did you do that? Through mouthfuls of wildebeest, the old crocodile finally responded, I did nothing. So that is the story for today. And the topic, was doing nothing at all. The core of the topic is doing what matters versus busy bragging. We're all a little like the young crocodile, believing that we always have to be doing something to get results. If ever someone would have told us that we would see greater results by spending more time doing nothing, we would have surely rolled our eyes and continued to chip away at our 16-hour day of work. We think that in order to be successful, we have to be constantly building, working, growing, and developing the next thing, whatever that thing is. All of us have a problem with busyness, but being busy and being successful are not one and the same. And I think if we were to make doing nothing more of a priority, we might find ourselves catching more wildebeest versus measly catfish. But doing less or nothing at all is easier said than done, especially in a society that suffers from extreme busyness. Let's take a closer look at our unhealthy obsession with staying busy. So this is called the extreme busyness epidemic. It's another epidemic that we have been facing for a number of years. So mankind has been struggling with busyness since the beginning of time, or at least since 425 BC when Homer walked the earth. The Odyssey tells us the tale of the lotus eaters, a strange people that sloth around all day long, eating lotus and doing nothing else. And what was stranger than fiction was that these people were content with their lives. Homer wrote that after some of the Odyssey's crew ate the lotus eaters' lotus fruit, they became like the lotus eaters, content, relaxed, and a bit lethargic. Terrified that if all of his men ate the lotus fruit, they would be unmotivated to return home. Odysseus ordered the affected men to be tied to the ship benches and for the ship to sail immediately. It's interesting. Odysseus' reaction to this feeling of doing nothing sounds similar to the corporate CEO, the startup founder, and the collegiate football coach we know today. though they, of course, are just the tip of a much larger societal iceberg that feels frozen with fear at the thought of doing nothing. The world as a whole now measures value in terms of busyness versus quality of work. In many ways, it has become something of a status symbol to be busy. How many times have you heard or had a conversation like this? And Aditya, I'm going to use your name in the conversation. So, a conversation goes like this. How have you been lately, Aditya? Oh man, just insanely busy. That's awesome to hear, man. Keep killing it. We've grown to subconsciously measure a person's worth based off how many hours they work, how much is on their plate, and put simply, whether or not they're running around like a chicken with their head cut off. In Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week, Tim pokes fun at this idea by facetiously saying that if you want a promotion, you should appear to be more busy by working longer hours, scrambling around, and constantly answering emails. But sooner or later, all of us have to ask ourselves what our mission is. Is it to be the busiest, or is it to make the most impact? And what's fascinating is that when we look at some of the greatest minds to grace planet Earth, we see an interesting commonality. They all make time for doing nothing. The power of doing nothing at all. Making time in your life to do nothing can be challenging, especially during the work week where we are constantly pummeled by bombarded with meetings, notifications, and an ever growing list of tasks. Busy founders have started implementing think weeks into their annual schedules, week long periods where they spend reflecting, reading, thinking, and living outside the all encapsulating world that is running a business. While young founders like Skillshare's Mark Kanjana Prakon have adopted this practice, as well as big names like Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, and Tim Ferriss. It was Bill Gates who originally made the Think Week famous. For many years while running Microsoft, Gates would retreat into a week-long Think Weeks twice a year, not vacations, but actual periods of time dedicated to doing nothing. Gates was so adamant about his Think Weeks that family, friends, and Microsoft employees were banned. Today, Gates attributes much of Microsoft's success to the big ideas and concepts he stumbled upon while doing nothing. And we'll think about implementing nothing time, right? Personally, we can't compare to Gates, but you don't necessarily have to ban family and friends to retreat into a think week, though. I'll give you an example. Every year, you can take at least a full week off from your company or work and head back to your hometown if you don't live there to meet your parents and your family and spend time with them. Or maybe you could take this time and spend it in a vineyard, as a friend of mine recently did. She spent time seeing how wine is made and actually helping make it. Obviously, she got to taste it too. All thoughts of startup growth or conversion or metric rates slip away when you're picking grapes or making wine. It's meditative and calming. I know that grape picking won't land you at the top of Forbes magazine or GQ lists, but it's a personal measure of success. And somehow, some of your greatest and best ideas will come to you during this period. For someone who can't take an entire week off to work once a year to do nothing, I recommend taking a slightly different approach, embracing the digital Sabbath. On either Saturday or Sunday, force yourself to step away from all forms of technology, a practice known as digital Sabbath. Shut off your smartphone and hide it in your closet. Power down the laptop, slide it under your bed, and try with all your might to refrain from binge watching Netflix. Give your brain space to think by stepping away from the daily grind and doing nothing. Your mind will have time to stumble upon new ideas and further process old ones. You may find the success that results from this practice to be similar to that of the old crocodile at the beginning of this story. While we tell ourselves we can achieve more by scrambling, sometimes it's better to close our eyes and just float and wait until the wildebeest shows up. Thank you.